If you've been on the internet recently, you will have seen a lot of content sort of calling out the previous generations, especially the boomers, on their behavior and how they've sort of created the situation we're in right now. And I wondered, how true is it, right? Because some of the videos are really good and they really do go into how they put us in this situation. But I kind of wanted to create a more comprehensive timeline of sort of what the heck happened and put it out here so that people can sort of reference and sort of understand how things have changed. Now, as I've gone through the timeline and sort of put things together in a more complete way. It can't be perfectly complete because oh my god, this was a rabbit hole so much deeper than I thought it'd be. Which makes sense, right? The 20th century was so complicated. We sort of come into a couple of topics that we're going to be sort of referencing throughout the entire video. One of them is the move from a ultra high trust society during, for example, the Teddy Roosevelt time to a medium trust society in the Franklin Roosevelt to Nixon time to a low to very low trust society in our time. It's also going to talk about how boomers, it's not all on them. Now that I've really looked into it. Now, a lot of the things that are happening right now is on them, but there's it's sort of a from victim to perpetrator type deal with the boomers. And so I want to explain all of that throughout the course of this video, and hopefully, you'll be able to understand what I'm saying. and I I might ramble a bit, so please be patient with me. I've recorded this video before, and yeah, it's a tough cookie. So let's begin. So I want to start basically with context for the boomer. So if we're starting with the context for the boomer, we can't really start with the boomer. We have to start somewhere along the lines of the end of World War II. Greatest Generation is coming back to America. They did it. They defeated the great evils, and everybody's really moralized. But the government has a problem, and that is the problem of the fact that the machine sort of keeps going, right? People go to war and they come back and there is nothing waiting for them. The economy has sort of moved on from them. All of the places that they would have inhabit are no longer vacant. And this is something that the government had experience with because of the fact that the exact same happened at the end of the First World War. And there was, let's say, upheaval that could easily have led to some sort of revolution. And they didn't want this time. So while morale was high, they decided to institute something that called the GI Bill and a bunch of other social programs in order to make it so that um, the greatest generation coming back, who would be the parents to most of the boomers, could build and feel included and feel like their service had paid off, right? And so here's one of the big impasses with the boomers and one of their big lies. You look at them, right? And you see this with like a lot of very self-serious corporate people, right? They're like, I built what I had with my own hands, and I didn't have no help from the government. Oh man, nobody helped me. That is an absolute lie. These people received one of the biggest stimuli that has ever happened in the history of the world. Okay? The GI Bill was enormous. It allowed the greatest generation to purchase property, build houses, get cheap educations, start businesses. It was the full package. They wanted to build a middle class and build it fast. And all of this infrastructure was going to be directly inherited by the boomers, right? So when they say that they didn't have anything to help them, let's not even forget the fact that our buying power is like one third, while things have become like what 8x more expensive when it comes to like property at least. Let's not even mention that. But the fact of the matter is that during those times, not only was property cheap, the government was dishing out money. And the people in the radius of the blast that was going to benefit from this very, very much were going to be the boomers. So that is one of the big lies that they keep on just they won't shut up about. They will not shut up about. No, the capital that they had and the is a result of the amazing financial situation and the amazing wealth that they inherited and the fact that prices were normal. Okay? And here's where we start seeing the boomers being like the bad guys, right? Because the prices were normal later on, after the boomers start becoming adults and inherit homes and buy homes and this and that, they decide that actually my property value is a lot more important than people being able to buy homes. And so they start vetoing construction of new homes, and the downstream effect of that is the situation we're in now. But that's not 100% of the story. So let's sort of rewind a little bit once again. Imagine you live in Theodore Roosevelt's United States. And I'm going to talk about Teddy quite a bit because I'm using him as a frame to sort of contrast him at the very beginning of the 20th century, president of the United States, with literally everything that came after. Okay? Teddy believed in competition. He believed in being beholden to history, to his fellow man, and to God, right? And he believed this and he felt it down to his bone. He was a man of immense principle, right? Principles guided his life. Moral principles. Not none of this like corpo ethics and like these like vague ideas of morality. No, no, no. He had an absolute morality that guided him. People are not allowed to screw each other over. There is a minimal moral standard that you and your company need to meet in order to operate in your country. If you do not meet this minimal moral standard, get out. We don't want you. Okay, so let's establish that. There's also the fact that he was a conservative in the full way, right? So it wasn't just about uh it wasn't about being rich or like being essentially a corporate bootlicker like it is now. That's essentially what American conservatism has come down to. It was about maintaining family. It was about looking at your country and seeing this is a gift from God, but it's also God's property, and we are supposed to be the stewards of it. We are not allowed to abuse it. We must protect it. There's beauty here. There is a huge blessing that we are, yes, we can extract from, but we're not allowed to abuse, right? And so that is to set the stage for what's coming next. So now we're fast forwarding to President Hoover. President Hoover was an engineer, right? And he was someone who, I believe he ran mines and believed that the country should be ran like a machine. Horrible idea because a country's not a machine and it's not it's sort of one of those sick materialist ideas from the industrial revolution that sort of has its roots in the in the enlightenment. I really it's really disgusting to me. I really don't like it. Because a country is not, it's not a company. A company shouldn't be run like a machine, but a country definitely shouldn't be run like a machine. But that's what he believed. And in contrast to Roosevelt, who believed that the the thing that gave everyone an advantage, not only as a market but as individuals, was competition. Competition created character. It created great people within the system. Competition made sure that people were treated well. It made sure that innovations kept flowing. And if a company misbehaved, then there is no such thing as a company misbehaving, right? The people within the company are misbehaving, and they should be punished. The company is going to be punished too as an entity, but the people are going to be punished to the full extent that you should punish them, right? We see a lot of things right now where companies do things that are morally just almost incomprehensible and completely unacceptable, and they get a pat on the wrist or some fines or some almost symbolic jail time in essentially luxury prisons. Um, but no, no. If you misbehave, you're going to be punished properly. And big corporations that lie, cheated, and stealed their way to the top uh, just weren't going to be allowed to do it. And companies that abused their workers weren't going to be allowed to do it. And companies that colluded with each other to fix prices and to make take more ownership of the market. We have this example right now with the big three of memory manufacturers, right? So Micron, SK Hynix, and Samsung. They price fix all the time. They've been busted for it so many times. And they've only just started recently to actually get proper punishments for them. Hopefully that continues to be a trend and there's a lot more interest in punishing the people. But in Roosevelt's time, at least for the ones that he could control, for example, like Micron, which is an American company, it wouldn't have just been like jail time. It would have been, oh, you guys are a monopoly, right? Oh, it's very hard for other companies to compete with you because they need the contracts and the fabrication that are just impossible to create for someone who's outside of the industry. Okay, you're being busted up into 10 different companies, and you are all going to compete with each other now. And you're going to have to share the resources that you shared as one company, but you're not allowed to collude with each other. Hoover took the opposite approach. He believed that it was a great idea to let companies collude with each other. And he believed it was a great idea to get companies on a table with one another so that they can talk and they can, make plans, and the government should facilitate them. That's what he believed. He didn't believe the government should be a referee to stop abuse between different companies and from companies to the people and vice versa. No, 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 no. He believed we should enable them. They're our friends. The companies and government corporations and government buddies. All right, it's just inseparable. So that sort of thought by the by the end of his administration, by the way, the Great Depression was going to start. So you know that's essentially where that ended up because of course it was sort of the inevitable result. And this is where a lot of the failures in Keynesian economics start to become a thing, right? The government directly interfering with the market, but not just as a way to regulate it and ensure fairness and justice and a moral standard, but as a stimulus, in order to prop companies up, in order to keep companies that should die alive, in order to maintain strength at an international scale. And so every single time they did this, it failed miserably. It was always a horrible idea. It was one of the things that kept the Great Depression lasting as long as it did. After Hoover was Franklin D. Roosevelt. Now he's the one that implemented this GI Bill, and he sort of had this language of we need to be solid, we need to have solidarity with one another, build each other up. But at his core, he was still just like Hoover. He was a manager. He believed that the government managed the country. The country was just an economic sim. So the government exists as a entity that manages the economy sim that is the market within a country. And the the GI Bill was just sort of a way to prevent young men from rising up against the country after they returned from World War II. It wasn't actually like anything um, that was truly coming from a place of solidarity in him. And you can also see it in how things turned out in the long run, right? So the increase in taxes to fund the war efforts and to fund all of these fund all of these programs that existed during that helped the greatest generation become so great, those things still kind of what existed in Theodore Roosevelt's time. The difference is, for Theodore Roosevelt, if there's a time of crisis, all right, guys, you need to start chipping in. All right, everybody, we're gonna have us. He was a big like the square deal. Everybody's getting represented in this deal. Everybody's doing their part, right? And so, yes, he would have increased taxes on the rich. He would have increased taxes on corporations. And once the project is over and things sort of stabilize, all right, it's over. Bye. Like everything would have returned to baseline. Franklin D. Roosevelt, as a manager, saw that, oh my God, this is awesome. We can just keep taxing. So as these government programs fizzled out and became sort of untenable, they become sort of you, you really shouldn't maintain them because it's a bad idea and it's a waste of resources. And these people are already successful. As that sort of happened, he still kept taxes high because that's great for the government, right? We can still get a lot of money because we're the managers, all right? It is our moral duty to have all of this money so that we can control you. And so that is one of the big shifts the from the Teddy to the to the Franklin Roosevelt administration. Around this time, there was also something else going on. The the boomers were sort of growing up, and there was this shift, right? The boomers sort of saw the government as a give me everything machine, right? Sort of how millennials saw institutions and corporations. Like they were sort of fed the promise that go to university, the university will take care of you. Once you're out of university, a corporation is going to take care of you. That is your promise, right? For boomers, the promise was the government gives you everything. It's a button that entitles you to land and to loans and to a great inheritance. And they grew up thinking that all of this was their own merit. So that's why you see like boomers nowadays and they're like actually insane. Like they actually believe their own like bullshit. They'll talk about how self-made they are, how they made it, man. And then you look into their history and it was just like, wow, okay, you sort of had it pretty easy, not gonna lie. It's a lot of performative struggle and a lot of performative work. I grind all the time, performative grinding. And you can see Gen Z and millennials trying to emulate that pathetically for social media in order to grift and extract the way that the boomers could from the economy. But that's the thing, right? Because for the boomers, when those programs that helped their parents started fizzling out, that was a breach of trust. They were entitled to that. And then comes the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War sort of marked a great differentiation where boomers were doing great. They were set up to succeed, but they weren't getting exactly what they wanted anymore. And now there was a draft that wanted to send them to war. And there were a lot of protests that said they were on principle. And that's you can see a difference between them and the greatest generation in that, right? The greatest generation, there were many that volunteered to go because it was their duty and their friends were going and people they knew were going. Their fellow man was going to war to fight a great evil. I need to go as well. With the boomers, it was just like protest out of principle, right? Because the war was wrong. And let, let's be honest, right? Vietnam and World War II were a completely different can of worms. You are, it's sort of justified that they felt that. But the problem was, we later see that they didn't actually feel that way. They actually didn't care whether the war was just or not. They actually just didn't want to go to war. They really didn't care if there was a danger out there. They just didn't want to go fight. So that's where you see a huge moral character differentiation between the boomers and silent greatest generation, and even to a certain extent, I don't remember what the what the generation before the silent generation is called. We'll move on. But you see a great difference because once the government sort of said it, they were like, "Wow, things are getting really hot. We cannot have a draft. That's just not going to happen." Which, by the way, boomers try to tell us all the time that like we're ungrateful, and if there's a draft, we should go fight. And you can see a lot of like the language that they're using right now with the stupid conflicts that they are doing right now for their own entertainment because they just want to burn people alive. They will they will look at you and say that you're ungrateful for not wanting to fight in their like pet little war sim where they just want to attack people rapidly, right? But when they were excluded from the draft, they stopped protesting. There were still people protesting out of principle, but the government was no longer afraid because it was reduced so much. Because these people, the boomers, didn't actually care, man. They didn't give a fuck about whether the war was justified or not. Not even in the slightest. It's so ridiculous the disconnect they have with themselves and the entitlement. But later, it came out that the government had been lying about the premises of the war because the Vietnam War was very much just a gigantic scheme by the war machine, right? And so now, for the boomer, they've stopped giving me stuff and they're lying to me. They're incompetent. And they were. The government was incompetent. This is where I'm saying, like, they're victims to perpetrator. Like, the government did try to cheat them and lie to them. And so the answer that they were propagandized with at the time, because remember, since the days of Hoover and Franklin D. Roosevelt, the the machine that is corporations had gotten so much stronger and so much out of control. And we're a huge propaganda machine and did have a lot more money in government because regulations around that have become a lot less strict, essentially. Like they had loosened, they started opening, sort of edging open that Pandora's box of letting private money flow through the government to manipulate government and to manipulate media. And they were fed with an answer, and that was, we cannot trust the government. We, the righteous corporations, need to take control. And so we start getting to the the Nixon administration. The Nixon administration sort of marks the end of the gold standard. Full stop. Right. Internally, the gold standard had been kind of not there for a really good while, but officially at an international stage, the gold standard was gone, and that made the abstract market, Wall Street, essentially go out of control. And it ended up in this absolute behemoth, disgusting monstrosity that we see today. Um, but we'll get to that later. Maybe in another video. I don't know. So that causes its own issues, right? The decoupling of the gold standard. It also makes them look a lot more incompetent. And it feeds into this Reagan, moving forward from Nixon to Reagan, the Reagan sentiment of, which Reagan was right. You know, there's like, what was it say? There's nothing scarier than hearing someone knock on the door and hearing, "We are the government, we're here to help," something like that, right? And he's right. The government was so corrupt and so incompetent and so, it's just filled with nonsense at the time. And it felt like they were just something that needed to be bypassed. During this time as well, we have what is essentially known as the Powell memo. So the Powell memo is written by a lawman, and it is a plea. He was someone who was, I believe he was. Let me actually check. I think he was about to be. Um, he was about to be voted into the Senate. He was voted into the Senate, I think, a couple of months after he sent out this memo. But the memo in the 70s essentially was a call to action to big corporations, saying, pleading essentially, guys, the the regulations on us have become weak. We can take this, please take this opportunity to take control, take full control. It outlined the way that corporations could take control of the government essentially forever. And they did, right? And he was voted into Senate a couple of months later. Could have been he could have been voted into something else. He was voted into some sort of office, representative office a bit later. So that's the sort of people that we're dealing with. And that's how low trust in government was, right? Like this is transitioned from high trust society in the early 20th century to just like nobody trusts the government. We would rather have the country in the hands of these corporations that have proven time and time again to be corrupt than have it in the hands of these people. And it didn't help. It didn't really help. It actually made things a lot worse because turns out that the corporations that already had their hand in the pie, but now they could just completely control. And now they were the gatekeepers that said whether or not you could run for any sort of big office, right? They decided that only with their backing could you even have a chance of being seen as a candidate. And so that might have changed a little bit now in this age, but this is where it started. And the boomers knew. The boomers and Gen X absolutely knew that this was a horrible idea. And that, I mean, think of the hippies, dude. Like, think of the hippies. Like, they absolutely understood that the corporations were going to destroy everything once they got hold. They knew that Wall Street was going to become a monstrosity that would essentially try its best to destroy the world. They knew that the military industrial complex um, was going to keep on manufacturing wars so that wealth transfer could occur. And with the coming of this sort of abstract market and this mass deregulation from the 80s onwards, um and sort of the idea that actually the market manages itself perfectly and corporations are perfectly capable of managing each other, and actually this is the perfect form of competition, right? And if people are abused by this system, don't worry, because just because because that's how the market goes. It doesn't matter, like, you might be um you might be given an unfairly low wage, but that's just the way the market rolls, baby. Okay? We can't even change that. That's just the way it's always been. That's the American way. It wasn't. That is a complete lie. That does not exist. Before, there was absolutely the idea, like, Theodore Roosevelt believed very heavily that his biggest fear was the government coming becoming to be controlled by an invisible force. And that's exactly what happened in the 70s, 80s in the United States, with the deregulation, with the coming in of lobbying. And then we have even the accidental findings that or ways that corporations manage to absolve themselves of responsibilities towards their employees and towards people. Um, and Pension is a good example of that. But we'll leave that for a different video because that's actually a really fascinating topic, and how they sort of got rid of pensions and moved towards the 401k. And this was an accident, but it actually ended up tying your parents to the market. And so now your parents also, even though it doesn't exist, dude, even though this growth that we see on your 401k, the S&P 500 constantly going up, the Dow, like that stupid woman in the US Congress that was like, stop talking about the Epstein list, all right? Look how the Dow's doing. It's like, fuck you, okay? I do not care how the Dow is doing. But boomers do, because at a certain point, companies found out that they could not give you a pension and tie, not only that, but make you dependent on the market for your retirement. And the market's growth is like, you have to be invested in them. You have to care that these companies, even no matter how corrupt they are, no matter how nonsensical the growth is, no matter how abusive or extractive or just borderline evil the company is, it has to keep growing, because otherwise, oh, my retirement, right? Okay, I said it was gonna be for another video, but I sort of let it all out here. Um, and so you have all of this, the shift from a high trust society, a high trust in the government, to a low trust in the government and high trust in corporations, and then now we have low trust in government and the corporations, and nothing is going to change that for now. And we have this, like, idea that Reagan established of Reaganomics, that corporations were immediately able to be like trickle down economics, and the corporations immediately found ways to make the economics not trickle down, actually. So we're just fucked. Um and they didn't do anything to stop it. And they knew. People warned them. They were warned. They were so resentful towards the government for lying to them and for not giving them free lunch, that they decided it was better to destroy the country, and leave the country in the hands of the greediest, most just satanic. I'm gonna say it, dude. Like, evil people, just to get back at the institution of government. And they had chances to vote for people that were on neither side, but they decided to vote for the Uni-Party. Because remember, after the deregulation happens, and after, like, the Powell memo, and the companies take control of the government, there is no such thing as Democrat versus Republican anymore. They are all just there's a reason, like, the neocons and the neoliberals are both just constantly suckling at the toes of corporations, right? Whether it be Obama, whether it be Trump, whether it be Bush, all of them were Clinton, all of them were corporate. I'm not gonna say it. I was gonna say something, but I probably shouldn't. Um, but they were bad, and they were bootlickers, and they were getting their pockets lined, and you see it nowadays as well with every single politician. You see how many donations they get. You see how rich they are, in ways that they shouldn't be, because they're actually just parasites that actually they don't know anything. They don't know anything. They're not even informed on the few things that they should be informed about. They they don't know what they're talking about, but it doesn't matter, because that's actually a really good thing, because it means their conscience is never moved this way or that way. They just care where the money says they what opinion the money says they should have. And that's all they care about. And so, yeah, during Reaganomics, you see, like, the trickle down economics that didn't work. All the wealth got transferred, and then, like, the deregulation led to the rise in, like, private equity, the origins of private equity. There's a great video that I saw on YouTube about the origins, and it's essentially these people are capitalists, by the way. They're so capitalist. It's, they we're capitalist. That's why when we invest in ways in which we never have to take any risks, and If things go wrong, we still learn our money through loans, and those loans to us aren't loans to us, they're loans towards the company we invested in, and that company is going to pay that off by going into bankruptcy. So essentially, you pay for it. You're the one that pays for it. The debt is socialized. That's, by the way, how your economy has been running for a while now. Just by socializing every single debt and putting all of the risk onto you. And so that's also one of the reasons why you look at a lot of investors and you're like, how are these people this stupid? That's because it's literally gambling, and it's gambling with no risk. It was a great video, by Moist Critical, with Charlie, and he was talking about the one of the guys that's one of the like finance investment bros in the video game industry, and he's like, yes, it actually screw making good games. It is much better to get that one live service games that hits. Like it's much better to make 10 live service games that fail and then get that one that works. And the reason they think that is because they actually don't live in the real world. It is a result of this abstract economy that was created and deregulated and just allowed these people to become literally deranged. They don't understand anything. They think that this is the way things actually work. It only works this way because we're brute forcing it, and we're brute forcing it for extracting from the working class and like the middle class and the lower class. Everybody has to pay for it except these fucking parasites. And let's not even talk about like the environmental risks and stuff like that, right? I talk about that a lot. I work with an organization that 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 cares a lot about that, right? And I run a podcast at Tangelic YouTube channel Tangelic with the organization that I work with, Tangelic, that is trying to help underserved communities get access to solar energy and to the tools to maintain it, right? And to be able to exist off of the grid with electricity, with clean cookware, with the ability to sort of a much greater ability to be independent, to be self-sustaining. And I do the podcast with them, and I get to talk with a lot of people, tech bros, finance bros, people in climate in the climate space. And one of the things that you find out constantly is that no matter how much you try to move it, the because of this disgusting system we've created, and it is this US system that infected the entire world. Don't get it wrong, don't get it twisted, right? The entire world followed behind. um that nothing seems to make sense, and our priorities are completely wrong. And so I want you guys to just really think about this. We really need to think about our priorities. We really need to think about what we want, right? Especially you guys on the right wing, man. I'm on the right. I was an anarcho-capitalist as a teen, okay? I know what capitalism is. I understand the appeal of a free market, and I believe in markets. But I'm I'm a Christian first. I'm a follower of Christ first. I'm a person first. I'm a brother first. I'm a son. You know, I want to be a father. And I want my kids to have a better world than the one I live in. But buying power is getting lower, and that is because, and this is my gripe, especially with American conservatives, man. You guys really need to, not the ones I know in my generation, but if you look at the American conservative sister, I was seeing, I was going to do a commentary on a video by Brett Cooper. It was an interview she did, and they're so comfortable. Like American conservatives are so comfortable extracting from a rotting system that only benefits a few and that will leave their children in limbo eventually. I call them the moderately selfish right, but actually they might be extremely selfish. Um they're like, well, this is the system we live in for now, so let's what? No, we have to reject this system. We have to reject this, dude. We have to reject people's retirement being tied to these fucking corporations, to the S&P 500. This cannot keep being this way. Things are going to need to change. We're going to need to come back to reality. If we want a better future for us, we can have a better future. It's easy. It's actually not that hard, dude. We have the technology to make energy cheap right now. We have the technology to enable ourselves to have our cake and eat it too. To have our technology and all these wonderful little technological luxuries that we've built and have them for cheap. And all we have to do is say, I don't need Uber luxury. I don't need Louis Vuitton. I can have a cheap wallet handmade in my country that is much higher quality than the Louis Vuitton wallet for much cheaper. And it's not going to have that little brand on it. And like if you're one of those people that like and if you are still rich and you want to get like some fancy car, right? Go ahead, dude. If you want a car that's gonna like break down constantly, and that a repair for like a $5 part is gonna cost you $250,000, and you'll gladly pay it because you're some sort of schmuck, because you're some sort of ghoul, consumeristic ghoul creature. Good for you, man. But it is a risk I am willing to take to lose uber luxury in exchange for having a country and a world that is friendly towards families, that is friendly towards real work life balance, that is friendly towards community, right? One of the big issues with the GI Bill, right? It's like it helped the greatest generation buy houses, but it created the suburbs because those places were specially zoned, and so they ended up breaking up generational families, and they ended up pulling people out of their communities that they've spent so much time investing themselves in, and so it basically restarted our investment in society. And it's something that sort of spread out over the world. You have that in Mexico. You have that. I'm sure you have the suburbia in so many places, and in all of the places, it's had this effect. It is not okay. We need to get our priorities straight. We need to change. We just can't let this happen. We need to start regulating corporations as people, as what they really are, people that are misbehaving. Sometimes so much that they should be locked up forever, dude. And they should have they should have their assets seized and pay restitutions, right? Like the big private equity companies, health, a lot of healthcare, a lot of insurance, a lot of a lot of the tech companies, right? They need to be properly busted. Like we need to bring back monopoly busting, and we need to bring back the government st- not caring about the economy. Fuck the economy. All right. After that period of time in like the 40s, the GDP became completely decoupled from quality of life. So the premise is quality of life increases with GDP. That's why we care so much about it. That's supposedly what the government says. Is actually because they get rich, but that's what they say. But it's been so long since it become decoupled from it anyway. So who cares? And it was also probably coupled with it, not because that's actually true, but because this was a time of great development. Air conditioning was getting cheaper. Ways to preserve your food were getting cheaper. Computing was getting cheaper, right? And so quality of and medicine was getting better and cheaper. And so quality of life was increasing so drastically, probably because of this, and nothing to do with like the GDP as a whole. Just GDP number go up. This infinite number go up, you're paying for it. It's not real. All right. We need to return to understanding that if you have a company and if you have a country, a lot of the times it's going to be in a state of balance. And that's actually going to be nice because that's going to be a time of peace and tranquility, and people are going to be doing good, and companies aren't going to abuse you, and you aren't going to abuse other people, and nobody's going to be insane, driven insane by the markets, driven insane by AI, being insane by like the things, the unreal things they're enabled to do with the way that this abstract market works today. Anyway, that's I think that's a good place to stop. Um I have a couple of I have some things that I want to talk about in the next video. I found some LinkedIn posts. And so that's going to be really really fun because there's nothing worse than a LinkedIn post, man. These people are an exact examples of what I've been talking about this whole video, just completely disconnected from reality, leeches. They're just leeches. But anyway, I hope this was comprehensive enough. Let me share with you guys one of the references I made because I grabbed all the ideas that I wanted to talk about that I've been thinking about for the last couple of weeks, and I just had this thing generated, this sort of pseudo timeline regulated with all the different like things that I wanted to take into account. The way the citizens thinks and the financial system and historical anchors, institutional role throughout the ages. The Powell pivot from the Powell Memo and the Roosevelt Standard from the beginning with the Roosevelt Standard and ending with the pivot towards essentially just disgusting materialism, which I talked about more in my previous video. If you guys want to check it out, um, about the difference between Protestantism and the Apostolic Succession denominations, so Orthodoxy and Catholicism, and why I think that they're not the same thing at all. They're not the same. I love my Protestant brothers and sisters, but it is essentially a different religion from the religion I believe in, being a Catholic, and it shares a lot with Orthodoxy because of the apostolic succession and the origin of that breakdown. And I think that's also the origin of the breakdown we see here begins with the Enlightenment and the sort of materialism disguised as rationalism that the Enlightenment brought forth immediately, like immediately, if you really look into the history, immediately started to use as an excuse to abuse people. The moment people's rights were human rights and not natural rights given by God, the abuse from corporation and government towards people, whoosh. I mean, just look at the Industrial Revolution, right? Uh, Not to say that people were living great. Like you have like it's a balance, right? Because times were hard naturally back then, right? And so there was abuse that that came with the hard time, but then it was replaced by abuse that just comes from people that are like insane and greedy. The greedflation. But yeah, so if there's anything here that you guys would want to hear more about, because I'm pretty sure I left out things compared to my first video on it, then please leave it in the comments. I would love to talk more about this. I would love to look into it a bit more. And yeah, man, don't trust boomers. They're lying to you when they say that they're completely self-made, and they don't care about you. They actually don't care about anyone. It's actually like a very well documented transition in their generation to them just being only caring about what's directly happening to them. And a lot of young conservatives are inheriting this mentality. Thankfully, the conservatives that I know in the United States are not. But yeah, be careful, right? Don't be manipulated. Remember, you are your brother's keeper. You are steward of the earth. Don't be manipulated and tempted by wealth, wealth that will give you nothing, right? But also demand that stability, right? Because your instability is actually the result of other people doing letting themselves be possessed by money. There is a there is a world and the possibility of most people doing fine and people living stably, and the government being a referee that makes sure that people aren't abusing each other, and that you are taken care of by the people that say they're going to take care of you, because most companies will say literally anything to get you on board and then just completely go back. It's like they're just allowed to lie. They shouldn't be. Sorry, I said I was gonna end it. If you guys want to see some more, yeah, I have my previous video. I'm probably gonna do some more soon. There's a little thingy right here if you want to support, because I just my coffee. um and I'm also going to leave a link to my gaming channel where I don't talk about this stuff mostly. I just game and talk about hobby stuff and anime and Pokemon cards and One Piece cards, and am chill. Am chill. I'm not going insane, and I'm not being political at all, because that's exhausting. And I'm currently going through Metaphor Refantasio and through Expedition 33, which is a fantastic game. It's made me very sad during my last little bit of gameplay, and I'm theorizing about it. It's really fun. So if you want to join me, go ahead and go over there. And I'll see you guys soon. If you got something that you would like covered, send it over. If you don't, then don't. But yeah, leave a like or whatever people do. Subscribe. Bye.